I think most cities you'll hear in this strange place called MIPIM will talk about the importance of low carbon and sustainability. And you'll go anywhere, I think, and you will see lots of really, really good examples about how all of us are coping with the challenges of climate change and the need to drive a low carbon sustainable economic base. I think in true Manchester style, we're trying to do things a little differently, not just rise to the challenge, but actually drive the low carbon agenda as a mechanism for driving a more stronger, diversified economy and more particularly creating jobs. This morning there's going to be two presentations. The first I'll introduce, got great pleasure to introduce Juergen Maier from Siemens. Siemens, of course, a very, very powerful part of Manchester's toolkit in the context of low carbon. And Juergen and colleagues are going to talk a little bit about what Siemens are about and how Siemens' ambitions are effectively married with Manchester. Juergen.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Howard. Not often I get introduced as a toolkit for Manchester, but very pleased to be just that. And I thought I'd start the presentation just by giving you all just a very quick overview of what we are in Manchester as Siemens. And starting on the top left-hand side, that's the building that, with very much the help and support of Manchester City Council, we invested in exactly 21 years ago, actually, and in the meantime, that has become quite an iconic symbol in Manchester. As you drive into the south end of Manchester, it stands there proudly and really gives a very nice high-tech image to that entrance into Manchester. And in the meantime, that has become for Siemens a very thriving, not just local, but global hub. Locally, it's our HQ for all of our industrial activities in the UK, and internationally, we do all of the work for grid connections, which is particularly important at the moment, given the offshore renewable type of activities. I'm going to talk about that a little more later on. In terms of the sorts of things that we do for Manchester with our technology, just a few examples here. Here is some traffic light signals. We actually manage all of the traffic signalling infrastructure in Manchester. And just recently, we signed a contract to start replacing all of the light bulbs in those. Sounds very simple, but it's actually very important, from normal incandescent light bulbs to LED light bulbs, which is going to save an awful lot of energy as we go forward. The other thing that we do is we put a lot of technology into buildings and make buildings more energy efficient. And here some of you will recognize this as the Civil Justice Centre, full of all of our great technology. But there's many buildings in Manchester where you will find our technology improving the energy efficiency. Another thing that we do in our Manchester activity, a lot of, is we use products produced in factories like this. And this is actually our factory in Cheshire, in Congleton. And they produce products that help factories reduce their energy bills. And in Manchester, what we do, we have huge teams of people that help manufacturing companies across the UK reduce their energy consumption. Again, as you can imagine, quite an important area. And another thing we're quite proud of is these lovely buses that some of you may have seen running around Manchester. They are now hybrid buses, and the thing that really makes them work is our motors and our inverters, and that makes those buses be about 30% more energy efficient than the diesel, or only diesel equivalents. And the other thing we do around Manchester is we service all of the fleet of TransPennine trains. We actually provided those trains as well. Those are Siemens trains running sort of between York and up to over to Leeds, up to Newcastle, up to Scotland. We've actually just taken an order for a further 10 of these, and those will be the first that will be electrified, and that will be running on the new electrified tracks from Manchester up to Scotland. And we're creating about another 50 jobs on the back of that in our depot in Ardwick as well. So you will have noticed a particular theme as I was going through that, and it was all about energy efficiency. And because of that, our business in Manchester is thriving. We currently employ around 1,200 people in these various activities just in Manchester. And our plan is that that needs to grow by about 400 over the next 5 years. So that's great news, but we can't do it with just that building, and that's where our new ideas for a new development in Manchester come in. That's the site as it looks at the moment with our wonderful building, and you can see a lot of space. And this is still an artistic impression note, so it's not yet been through formal planning. I think we may have some interesting discussions about that lovely wind turbine when we get around to that planning process. But you know, we have got some pretty great plans for this activity. But what's more important is that as we started to talk to Manchester City Council about this development, we said, well, if we're growing to the level of 400 people on this site into this sort of a facility, then should we not be developing this into a wider business park activity that allows the supply chain and other companies to join in and help grow with us, so that ultimately we in Manchester can take more market share in terms of the gross value add behind this fantastic market here. And this market really being offshore wind turbines. That's another thing that we do. So we're currently putting in about 50% of the UK's capacity in terms of offshore wind turbines. And what you need to do that is you first of all need an assembly yard. Now we can't do that in Manchester because you need to be on the sea. So we're doing this in Hull. But what you need to keep all of this going is you need a lot of this stuff here, which is all called smart grids. And we have decided that smart grids is going to be hosted in Manchester for the whole of Northwest Europe, and that is going to be a large part of the growth engine in terms of the 400 people that we talked about. And I'm very pleased to announce that just a couple of weeks ago we won a £1 billion order to put in the first high voltage link between Scotland and Wales, which is all part of how we're going to bring this power into the United Kingdom. And a lot of that work is going to be carried out in this building, which we're already building as part of the new development, where we're going to do a lot of that offshore grid connection work. And the final thing that I just want to say is, you know, why have we chosen Manchester? Because, you know, actually we could have done this in Denmark, we could have done it in Germany, we could have done it in Austria, and all sorts of other places. But the reason why we've done it in Manchester is because we really do have a great working relationship with Manchester City Council. You know, you have been incredibly supportive as we've developed this scheme, not just for ourselves, but how we're going to bring our supply chain into this. And then the other things that we love about Manchester is that a lot of the work that's going to go into here is actually R&D type work, and we can do a lot of that in collaboration with our 3 great universities in Manchester, and we've also got a great labour pool and skills pool that we can draw on to help us do this great sort of engineering work in Manchester, and also for a better future in Manchester. Thank you very much for listening.